Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. Happy beginning of September. This year has kind of flown by. Um, we are we got one more month left of this quarter, and then we're on the last quarter of the year, which starts on my birthday. Hey, October. So anyway, I hope you all have been trading safe. August was stupid choppy, but we know that if you understand the mechanics of the market, it makes sense because we ran for half the year, right? August is chopping up a little bit while the bulls and the bears fight it out. September is seasonally bearish, and then we can expect for October for us to bounce back and maybe move on through the rest of the year. There are a lot of things that's going to affect that. Whatever the Fed says, data, that type of thing. And then the next earnings season could definitely have us do a run. So, regardless, understand that I am more so neutral. But we trade what the charts give us. Okay. So I'll point that out in a minute after we go through our economic stuff for next week. Oops, I'm all the way down there. Too far. Okay, so first of all, that next week is a short week, Labor Day week. So there may not be a lot of volatility in there. We know how short weeks kind of act a little funky. So trade carefully, okay? So now next week, the data that we have, I think we do have something on Tuesday. These factory orders, that's not much. So Tuesday may be a dud in terms of volatility from the data. Wednesday, we have imports and exports coming out, and then ISM PMI. That could actually move some things. Thursday, we have our normal stuff. We have our jobless claims, and that usually may do a little something for the market. And then Friday, there is nothing. Well, wholesale inventory is at 10, but I mean, what is that going to do? So, not a whole lot of data to really move the market next week. And then with the short week, so it could definitely be a choppy week. So, please, please, please trade very carefully. Okay. All right. So, today is going to be a little bit longer because we have to go through some of these monthly setups. So hopefully you have taken a look at Frank's scanner. Now, one thing I did notice is I didn't look at the scanner until today. And unfortunately, because September already started, it was a little off for me in terms of the setups. So I had to kind of rearrange them how I needed. So when you're looking at monthly and quarterly setups, try to catch them before the month starts so that you can grab that list and be ready for when it breaks out. So I may have missed some things, still going to do some studying, but I do know what to expect or what I am expecting, but I'm still ready for anything. All right, so one thing I do want to point out is look at VIX here, okay? So VIX on the monthly has already triggered this rev strat. So if the VIX continues to be bearish, then we can expect that the market is going to run. Bloody September or not, we trade what the charts give us. And right now the charts are showing us that the market may not be done yet in terms of pushing. Okay, now we could definitely reverse, of course, and I'll show you that when we get to SPY. But as of now, it's looking like the VIX can at least come down here to this 1272. I mean, it's not far off. That's like 30 cents. It could certainly take it here and then reverse for a 3, but the VIX is still in this downtrend. 1272 and then bottom of this broadening formation at 1178 is where I am thinking that we're going to go. Looking at it on the weekly, that 212 down. Remember last week we were talking about how it was here and it was in a rough place. Well, it died, but it's sitting right back at the support that it's been at for a very long time. So it's interesting to see what it will do. It would take a lot for this to rev strat back to the upside. Not saying that it can't. All right, so looking at the dollar again, I keep doing this. Again, the month has already started, so you will be seeing this first monthly move. The dollar has been stuck. This is kind of like a bear flag almost, or a down channel anyway. Let me show y'all what I mean. You see that channel? So it's kind of been stuck in here. So breaking through here would be important for it to move to the upside. Otherwise, it may just reject right here and fall right back into this chop area that it's been in. Looking at it on the weekly, we do have a nice, I would call this a dragonfly doji. It's almost a hammer, but I think it's more of a dragonfly doji, which is still a bullish sign. Keep in mind, though, that it's been green for weeks. So some corrective activity is possibly due, but not necessary. Or not a given. All right, and the NASDAQ. So this is going to be the common theme that you're going to see with a lot of these stocks. Okay, so when we get there, you'll understand it. So I'll explain it more with the NASDAQ, and then I'll just give the levels on the other ones. So what you're going to see here is for the month, we have a red hammer. Okay, it's still a hammer. So we do know, just like I was saying, that August was very choppy. That's kind of what this is showing here. It was very choppy, and the bulls and the bears were fighting it out. The bulls were holding lines, the bears were holding lines, and now we've ended at a point where it could, which way will it go? We're going to trade the charts. Okay, so this actually would be considered a bullish Randy Jackson if it can break above this 15,763, and then we can expect it to at least go to the top of this broadening formation, and then maybe go to new highs if we go to the upside. One thing I also want to point out, my aunt was telling me last week that she's so sick of people saying, if we do this, then we do that. If we do this, then we do that. I do want to point out that I think that holding on to bias in the market is a great way for you to get clapped. I've seen it happen too many times. Y'all know that I've been bearish for the most part, short-term bearish, larger term bullish. But this past week when we had that bullish activity, it was nothing for me to switch a hat and say, okay, yeah, I know, we might be doing some bullish correction. Still somewhat bearish, but I don't hold on to the bias. And then for me, with the Strat and with me, I like to give you guys different options because I never say, hey, I was right about this, blah, blah, blah. Mostly because I like to show you what I see and allow you to see the different ways that these can play out. For instance, this was a bullish candle for the most part on the month. When you look at it on the month, you have a huge head right here and then the shoulder like I showed y'all last week. So this shoulder area can come all the way down to, really, it can come down to this 13,233 and still be valid. So it can do like that and do something like that. And yes, it's an if then because we never know who is going to take control. We just try to follow the charts. We do know that this month started out for the most part bearish. That's one more thing I want to point out is that we will uncouple on Tuesday. So you will have a fresh week, a fresh month to uncouple and see what we look like. Because I remember I was looking at it on Friday. I was like, oh, time frame continuity is all green. Oh, that's right. We just started the month. Of course it's going to be all green. Okay. And so one other thing I wanted to show y'all, we was just looking at the week. So last week we were here and I was pointing out a head and shoulders on the week that is not, it kind of failed. Now, I follow Adam Mancini on Twitter. And he pointed out here that because it failed here, it failed to do this 2 up, 2 down and continue, that is bullish. So I somewhat agree, except When I look at this on the daily, there are a couple things I see here. I still see a valid head and shoulders. This is your head. This is your shoulder area, which I told you could come all the way up to about here. This actually came and filled this gap and rejected. So I think this is at a critical point right here. You do see this head and shoulders here, but at the same time, you see this inverted head and shoulders here. Okay? Validated as long as it stays above this 15,173-ish. So we're at an interesting point now. If we have that bloody September, we can expect this to come on down. Otherwise, this may have been a failed head and shoulders, and we could break out to our new highs again. So be ready either way. That's what we always like to do. And we trade what the charts give us. Looking at the Dow, ill. It has been like we've said ill for like months. It's just except for when it did like this, it's really not giving a whole lot at all. Now we've reached the top of our broadening formation for the most part, so interesting to see what it does. Oh, excuse me. No actionable signal here on the month or the week, but looking at it on the daily, it's the same thing. So there's your head, there's the shoulder area, but here's also your head and your shoulder. So this could kind of go either way. Y'all know I never like to say this is going to do this, it's going to do that. It's if-then statements for me. So we are ready for this to do it. This is almost like an inside hammer. So it would be interesting to see if this breaks out or what could break this out to the upside. And then, you know, it'll put us back in this chop area, but it may push to the top of this broadening formation. So 360 would be the top. And then 338 we would be looking at for the bottom as far as, or not the bottom, but the corrective activity to the 200 that I was still mentioning. Now remember, we said as long as these things are staying above their 200 on the daily time frame, we are bullish. So, you know, we do have our short-term bearish moments, but for the most part, larger picture, we are bullish. I still am expecting SPY to possibly come down to that 420. We will see. If September will do that, we'll get there though. So IWM has an inside month. It's not really a candle that I really like because it's not a hammer. It's like no one really won here. So you really would want to look for this to break to either side of this candle for the most part. So you really want it to break above 198 to try to go to the top of this broadening formation, or you want it to break down below that 182 that was our strong resistance and now it's a strong support. If it breaks below that, we can see it come down to 173. Keep in mind, this is the chop area. It finally broke above it, corrected, and found support. So this may actually move to the upside. So I would keep a good eye on IWM. Look at this, the support that it found. However, on the week, this is a head, and this is at the top of the shoulder area. So unless it breaks above here, this may be a head and shoulders on the week. But when you look at it on the daily, remember last week we were talking about how it was here and it was struggling right at the 200. Well, it wicked. Remember I said that it was having trouble closing. It said, all right, we're going to boom up. Like literally, this is where we were talking about it. And then it just boomed from there. You see these EMAs are starting to cross. It's a good sign. However, we do have somewhat of a shooter on the day there. So really interesting to see. Watch this and see what it does, because this could be your inverted head. And if it makes a shoulder area and finds support, then it may start moving back to the upside. All right, the Qs. Like I said, this is going to look a lot like the NASDAQ. So if this is the bullish Randy Jackson, we will be looking for break and hold above 384 to this 388, and then possibly to these highs, take out these highs over here, top of the broadening formation, which would be 409. Otherwise, this is somewhat of a hammer on a month, so there's not an actionable signal to the downside. You would have to find your way in. Not an actionable signal on the week as well. Did want to point out, though, that with this corrective activity in the reversal, these EMAs also did not cross and are staying up. So it's giving bullish, but we do know September is seasonally bearish. All right, so we will keep that in mind and we will stay ready for everything. Same thing with the NASDAQ. You got your inverted head and shoulders, almost a double bottom, but not really. It's just higher lows. Short term here, larger term, it's at the top of the shoulder. It came and filled this gap and then came back in. So really want to show y'all that with SPY. Okay, you got that same thing here. We were talking about this head right here, the shoulder. I want y'all to understand that shoulders can also be lopsided. They don't have to be like straight. Like 445 did not have to be the top of that shoulder. My level was 453. Now it could still actually go for this gap and crack. However, I want you to understand that we do have an inverted head and shoulders here. So here's your shoulder. That's the head. So your shoulder would last up until 445. So 445 for me is the do or die point for SPY. So you have this outside day right here. So if we did possibly a 3-2 down and we corrected down to 447 or even this 445 level, that is my do or die moment. If it breaks past there, we can expect these, because you see how it came down, turned up, came back up, which is bullish. It could possibly turn back down and come on down. However, if it does not, we may correct just to these EMAs, this 445, and then going up. Again, that would be against seasonality for SPY, but again, we trade the charts. So you got a larger head and shoulders and a smaller inverted head and shoulders, all right? When you look at it on the week, last week we were looking at this inside week and we were saying, oh, this kind of looks like a head and shoulders as well. This kind of boosted past that shoulder. I mean, it can still, again, be a lopsided shoulder, but it's almost looking like a failed head and shoulders to me. But again, I had posted in the Discord that 453 was like my do or die level for the bears. I felt like with all of this, because when we first talked about it, we were right here, right? Bulls stepped in, they really saved the market. Bears stepped in at 453. Now, Thursday and Friday was a struggle at the 453 level, but you see that they defended it well. Not to say we can't still gap up. Again, 455 will be my top, then our 459, and then 463 to top of my broad information. Otherwise, I gave those levels to the bottom. So that's what I'm thinking SPY might do. Now, one thing I always tell y'all is if you're watching the indices, especially SPY and Qs, Apple and Microsoft is something you definitely want to watch. Apple died for its earnings, but then recovered. So again, this looks just like the rest of them, where we have basically a bullish Randy Jackson setup. Not quite a hammer here. Nobody, in my opinion, was in control here on the monthly. So no actionable signal there. Beautiful recovery. And as another thing I was posting in the Discord was that I was looking for Apple to fill this gap here, 190.69. It got close. It's got about 60 cents away from it, and then it died. And then look at these two dojis. This is interesting because one thing Rob used to say, rest in peace, Rob, one of his sayings was hammer counters shooter, shooter counters hammer. This is gravestone, no, dragonfly counters gravestone. Like this is the craziest indecision candles I've seen back to back in a very long time. So basically these 2 days were a fight. So all eyes on Apple. if Apple loses this, granted we are very far from the EMA, so I'm thinking we can at least come down and correct to this 184. But if Apple loses this, we can expect some more weakness in the indices. This is almost like an evening star, but it was a double evening star. So if this does this 2 up, 2 down, then it could possibly die. Also, notice there is a PMG here. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a PMG on the daily, if September decides to come in roaring, and especially since we've had our corrective activity to come up here. Oops, sorry, y'all. Another thing to notice is that, yeah, I lost my train of thought like just that quick. Oh, these EMAs, I just wanted to say that that this one has crossed back above. So it just has to hold in order for it to stay bullish, because it could definitely come back down. If it does this PMG, then that's going to turn right back down. Microsoft, same deal. You got your possible bullish Randy Jackson here. Somewhat of a hammer. So if it can break above this 340, then we can expect it to go. Where is that? We can expect it to go to this, back to those all-time highs at 366.81, and then it may be able to make it up to maybe about 380. That would be my next upside target for Microsoft. However, we're at this rejection point. Microsoft, out of all of them, has the best. I didn't fly past my shoulder yet, because you got your head here, and it's still in the shoulder area. It's still being kept below these EMAs. So really, really watch Apple and Microsoft, because we saw how Apple was fighting. If it turns and has that PMG, and then Microsoft does this 2-1-2 down on the week, because you see this, we had this, and then this was our corrective activity. So if we continue down, that we can see that bloody September, because Apple and Microsoft are going to bring SPY and the Qs down. Okay, so keep that in mind with Apple and Microsoft. Looking at it, it's really hugging these EMAs right here. It was able to close above. Now this is giving me daily IWM vibes, where it was fighting right here and was able to close above. So it's really at a critical point. If it can still push to make it out of there, because on the daily we do have this inverted head and shoulders. So it may still be able to make it to the upside, which my top would be 345 for the bears to defend. Otherwise, it may, if it does this 2 up, 2 down, all of these are going to turn down. And I'm expecting it to come on down to this 200, maybe even try to fill this gap here before we continue to the upside. All right, so really quickly, just show you what our big players are doing on the monthlies. They look similar, where this would be a bullish Randy Jackson if Tesla can break above 267. But it started the month red, and on the week we are in a head and shoulders setup so far. Meta, kind of the same thing. On the weekly, you do have a possible rev strat if it can die. It is at the top of, well, not quite the top. Top of my shoulder is about 308 if it wants to continue up there. No actionable signal there on the monthly. But on the daily, it looks just like Microsoft, basically. So it's exactly the same thing, except you don't really have an inverted head and shoulders. You do have higher lows, though. So that's it I'm going to do for those. Let's go through the sectors really quickly. XLY. Of course, looks just like that. You have a possible bullish Randy Jackson if it can break above 174.87. Otherwise, you are in the shoulder area, and it could possibly rev strat if it's bearish. Otherwise, it's not really an actionable signal there. XLK, same exact thing. Kind of got a hammer, bullish Randy Jackson over 180. On the weekly, exact same thing, except it has more strength, and it really touched the supply zone here. So interesting to see if these bust through here or they die from here, honestly. after they've shaken a lot of the bears out, because the bears started getting bearish after having, 4 weeks, and then this was the week to shake them out. All right, XLF Financials does have an inside month here, not a candle that I love, so you would look for it to break out of either side there. And on the weekly, it has found the support at this 30 after having several red weeks, but again, it's not an actionable signal. XLC Communications, again, after several green months, you got your corrective activity here where it was a fight. To me, I think this is going to correct some more just because it really kind of needs it, especially if it wants to continue to the upside. Yeah, that's like the do or die level right there, 67.05. If it can break above that and hold, then it can probably break out of this. This is almost, it looks like an inverted head and shoulders, but it also could also be a bull flag, y'all. And some of those, I want you to understand that even though it sometimes looks like a head and shoulders, that could also print a bull flag if you have either higher lows or higher highs, and you just want to draw your levels so you can kind of see it just to make sure. Okay, this is what we have here. Yeah, you have a head and shoulders, but you also have a bull flag. So the failed head and shoulders can turn into a bull flag to the upside. Okay, quick lesson there. XLE Energy doing its thing. It's not really a, wait, do we have a new, did I miss that, y'all? No, it's next week. It's not really actionable signal here. It was last week, and it's basically boom. It's not really doing a whole much, but it is in a weekly inverted head and shoulders. So here's your head, and this is a shoulder area. So interesting to see if it wants to break out. It has triggered the quarter to the upside, and this for XLE was a double quarter breakout, double inside quarter breakout. So there may be a lot of room left there. 94.65. ZOM is one on the weekly list this week that you will see because XLE has triggered that to the upside on the quarter. Okay, so keep your eye out on your favorite energy stock. XLU, no actionable signal there. Looks like it's just continuing to die. No actionable signal on the week there either. XLI, oh, I'm on a quarter. I meant to do that. So XLI did a TTO and came back in. So if anything, if this 3 can 3-2 down, it has some room to move down. Otherwise, you want to really leave it alone. If it's a 3 on the month, you really only want to touch this if it breaks to either side. So when you have a 3 like this, if it breaks to the upside, the bulls have gained control. If it breaks to the downside, the bears have gained control. But remember, a 3 is a new broadening formation. So you want to either see this broaden to the downside or the upside, but you want to stay out of the middle of it. Okay, so we're not touching XLI unless it breaks to the upside or the downside. XLV. XLV is in an interesting spot. This is a lot of chop. But we do have an inside month here where it may break to one side or the other. I honestly wouldn't touch it unless it did break out of this area, because you can see right here it's kind of flagging. But we do have this shooter here, but it's respecting these EMAs. So if anything, you want to see it break down. It may really fall through here, or if the bulls step up, it can really break through to the upside, but otherwise I wouldn't touch it. XLP kind of looks similar. It's the same thing. You really want to see it break to the upside or downside. You have this 3 here on the week, so if it can 3-2 down, then it may go ahead and finally break down out of this chop area that it's been in. Real estate, same thing. Chopper. So no actionable signal here on the monthly or the weekly unless we die. XLB, you do have an inside month here, but again, it's not a candle that we really like. It's just kind of a fighting candle. So you really want to see it break to one direction or the other. If it can break over 86 or really break below 80, we might see some actual movement there. Otherwise, it's really just been hugging these EMAs and not really. You kind of got a double bottom there, but then you have a double top there. So it's kind of really sitting in a range. XOP. So you see how I draw these lines. I don't know why I didn't draw the other one. Come on. There we go. So just like how I just showed y'all how we draw these lines on the flags, and you see it broke to the upside. So would like to see it continue to see if it still has strength. Now, some of these I haven't gone through them because it's a new one, but you want to look at the quarter. So if you saw it broke through, then look at the quarter. You see that it has triggered the quarter to the upside. It's hit the first target, and it's trying to make its way to the second one. So that's what you would look for as far as targets with these. But look, it broke through, corrective activity, and the bulls stepped in. So XOP, XLE are really looking good as far as continuing to move on the quarter. XRT retail, it's just not much going on here. However, I did want to point out that we had this move up here, right? And if you fib it, oh, come on. Oh, come on. If you fib it properly, we came and corrected right to 50%. Okay? And that's, you know what? I'm sorry, y'all. I got to go back real quick because that's what I wanted to show y'all with SPY. I really wanted to actually do it with you guys because I hadn't done it before. So there we go. If we fib that down move, so SPY went above the 50%, and this was the level right here to let you know that it was going to continue going. 78% is where it rejected. So interesting to see what SPY does from there. I'm gonna do Q's really quickly. Well, I can look at that and see the same thing, honestly. Yep, 78%. And then, was it IWM or... bear with me, y'all. I just wanted to see something. IWM is right at 50%. So this is at a do or die moment. Definitely could die from here, but it's had its 50% corrective activity. Apple. No. Microsoft. Just wanted to look at that really quickly. So keep that in mind, y'all. Microsoft is actually struggling at the 38%. So my target up there would be that 339 if it can make it up there. Otherwise, it could possibly die from here. It's really interesting. So anyway, looking at XRT, it's kind of the same thing. It's corrected to its 50%, which also happens to be this 200 and a rejection point. So unless it pulls an IWM into doom, this may actually fall from here. Jets. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Go back to this. One thing I did want to point out with retail, even though it is looking bearish, one thing I did want to point out, where is it? It's back here. So last year, we boomed the first week of September, then died, and then retail really kind of bottomed at the end of September, and it somewhat ran for the rest of the year up until February. So why? Well, y'all know that it's about to be holiday season, holiday shopping season. So keep your eye on XRT to somewhat base, and then possibly have a run for the rest of the year as the holiday season kicks in. That's when you want to watch XRT. Jets, we know that the travel season is for the most part over, so we're not surprised that it has come back and given basically all of these gains up. So it's looking really bearish to me. This actually may have a 2 up, 2 down. Randy Jackson, bearish Randy Jackson on the week if it wants to go. Lithium, kind of the same thing, not really doing anything but at a support here. And if it does, if it had any corrective activity with Strat, that's a lot for it to do that though. So it's looking like it may actually go to this gap, especially after this TTO. It's quite a few gaps to the upside, so some corrective activity to the upside sounds about right. SOXL is not doing a thing. It looks like everything else. It's actually holding its support. So although we could look at it as chop, a lot of times chop is a base or a support that it's finding, and looks like it's found it right around 20. So this isn't really doing anything, to be honest. No actionable signal there or anything like that. IYT, nothing there, of course. Transportation, same thing as jets. Basically, well, this actually has only given up. Oh, come on, I keep doing that, y'all. I think this is only giving up about a half of its. 38%. So half would be this 240.53. Although this is looking like a head right here. So if it would continue to fall, that 240.53, otherwise this could be its corrective activity and it could continue to go back to the upside. If you think about it, since October, it's really just made higher lows, based for a long time right here, and then boomed. So still may have room. Yen, nothing, y'all. This is so ugly. Poor China. It's just been nil and then nothing. Like, we thought it was doing something last year and they were like, nope. And then now it's like really almost at the same place it was since last year. And it's just not, I have to do this just to look at the, it's just not doing much. So we will continue to keep an eye on China, but we're not really expecting much because it's really not doing much. All right, so we don't have any 2-week setups. Of course, the new month just started, so nothing there. Make sure you go to Frank's Scanner and make your monthly bearish and bullish list, okay? So you can see what's going on. I can run through them really quickly. I'm not going to go through the charts, but this, out of all the ones that I saved, these are the ones that caught my eye. I'm probably going to trim these down even more, but y'all know how I like to start them off just to keep my eye on certain things. And then here's my list for the bull. I told y'all about ZOM for the outside quarter, so that may be a decent swing. And then the rest of these I am looking at and will possibly find a play on that depending on, you know, how they move. Oh, excuse me, y'all. So the weekly list, again, these are the quarter triggers that we have been watching for a few weeks. Weekly list is a little small this week just because, you know, new month starting. AMD has found some support and we had a green week. So interesting to see what it does. Really only want this if it has some strong movement because it doesn't really seem like it's enough range here. But it would need to break that 110.21, which is a very strong resistance. If it doesn't, I most likely won't touch it. It could also reject there, which, you know, it's not going to really make for a good thing. So watch NVIDIA and AMD chips just to see what they do. Microsoft also had an inside week. So again, if we're going to do this shoulder, I want to see which way it breaks. It could break either way. JPM I actually like. Now granted, JPM has had several red weeks, so it may want to correct a little bit to the upside before it moves. But at the same time, this is a nice base where it may drop from here. And that's what I'm actually looking for, the drop to get to 143, possibly this 200 or 140.69. And it may even fill this gap here. And I like JP Morgan because it would be the inside breakdown. So breaking 145.50-ish would be the 212 down on the month. Okay. So you possibly have your inside week that could break your inside month down. Marble kind of looks like the rest of the chips where, well, like AMD, let me see. Let me say, so you have this big mother bar here, right? And then it chopped. And then it finally broke through that chop. But this could be a TTO because it's really only half of this move. So interesting to see if it can break above this 59.51. That may be its corrective activity with its TTO and to go to the upside. Otherwise, it could break and give the rest of this back. So watching Nike is kind of the same, where you see where we're in the chop. We TTO'd past the chop, took these folks out and these folks out, and then recovered. So do we come back up and, you know, move? That was our corrective activity. Or do we repeat this right here and fall to the next? So this would be like what Shay would call her sell model. You got up here, you base, you drop, you base, you drop. All right, so we'd be looking to take these folks out. Snow. Snow is kind of like the same thing with that sell model. You got your base, your drop. So looking for a possible base before it dropped again. This inside week isn't strong though, so that's why it's at the bottom of this list. And then Target, same thing. Target has base, drop, base, possible drop. All right, so just some things to watch out for. And that's really it. That's all I have for y'all this week. Maybe we'll have some more next week because we'll have 2-week setups. We'll see how the month has done us and that type of thing. We will have been past this short week and all of that. So I hope you guys have a wonderful long weekend. Hopefully this won't take forever to upload today. Have a wonderful long weekend. I will see you guys next week and trade safe. Bye.